to highlight some recent work that we've done on the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations that could help not hundreds, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but millions of Americans save some money while filing their federal income tax returns this year and in future years. As the ranking member of a subcommittee called Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations in the Senate, my staff and I work closely with a fellow named Rob Portman, Ohio, who's the chairman of our subcommittee, and with his team. If you put us all in a room together, Senator Portman's team, Republicans, our team, Democrat, and wonder who's who and whose side they're on, you wouldn't know one side from the other. Sort of like us working together, Mr. President, on the recycling issues with your team and mine. But Senator Portman and I study, along with our staff, we study big problems and big challenges facing America and Americans. And we try to identify common sense solutions in a truly bipartisan, almost nonpartisan approach that has characterized the work of this subcommittee, not just for a couple of years, but for decades. For years, I've heard the following question over and over again, Mr. President, you probably have two back home, but people in Delaware, and I'm sure in your state, ask this question: why can't you all just work together in Washington and get something done? That's what we do on our Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. We work together and we get, I think, a lot done. It's our bread and butter, and I want to talk for a few minutes today about some of the work here on the Senate floor. Over the past year, Mr. President, our subcommittee has examined a whole bunch of issues, but one of those is issues relating to the IRS Free File program. And earlier this week, we released a short staff memorandum laying out our findings. Over the next couple of minutes, I want to explain the genesis and the importance of the Free File program, and what our subcommittee learned about it, and some of the things that Congress and the IRS can do to improve the program and better serve taxpayers. Mr. President, I don't know if back in your home state, if you do town hall meetings, my guess is you've done a bunch of them. And I did a bunch of them when I was, especially congressman, hundreds of them, and as governor and even now. And I used to, when I was a congressman, we used to every year do, we only have 3 counties in my state. You have a lot more in yours, Mr. President. But we would have, once every year, a month or so before tax filing deadline, usually in March, I would host town hall meetings in each of our counties. And we would invite the IRS to come, along with the State Division of Revenue, to participate. And we would offer to people of Delaware the opportunity to ask questions, not just of me and my staff, but of the IRS and the State Division of Revenues about tax returns that were being filed. And it was something I love to do. I love helping people, and I know our presiding officer does as well. And it was a real chance to help people in a timely way. If you take that idea, and that was an idea for, like I'll say the 20th century, a 20th century idea, and a good idea. But we have a 21st century idea, and it's called the Free File program. And that's what I want to focus on now. So some people might be asking, well, what in the heck is the Free File program anyway? And going back to 1998, I was governor then, and I think our presiding officer might have been a House member, I'm not sure. But Congress directed the IRS to work with the tax preparation industry to create a way for Americans to file their taxes electronically. And this is around the time that when the first versions of search engines like Yahoo, like Google, were being developed and coming forward. Email addresses and web portals like America Online were rapidly expanding the availability of internet services, not just for homes, but for schools and other places too. And suddenly it was possible to do a whole lot of things on the internet for the first time, including filing our taxes electronically. Free File is the program that grew out of a mandate Congress issued, and taxpayers were first able to take advantage of the program in 2002. So my guess is the mandate from Congress to the IRS to make this program available was about 2 decades ago. And the first time that taxpayers were able to take advantage of that was a couple of years later in 2002. The program is really a partnership. The program is really a partnership between the IRS on the one hand and tax preparation companies like H&R Block and Intuit to offer complete free online tax preparation and filing service, not to all Americans, but to most. The original target was 60% was the original goal, original target. And today it's available to about 70% of all Americans. This year, most taxpayers earning less than $69,000 can use Free File to file their taxes for free. That's why we call it Free File. I'll say that again. This year, most taxpayers earning less than $69,000 can use Free File to file their taxes for free. A lot of times when you hear somebody offer you something for nothing, for free, you say, well, I'm not sure I'd want to do that. This is one that a whole bunch of taxpayers, about 100 million of them, in fact, can take real advantage of, because according to the IRS, over 100 million taxpayers are eligible to use this program, Free File. Over 100 million taxpayers can file their federal taxes for free. And one might ask, well, how do they do that? All they got to do is to visit this website to get started. And the website, I'm looking to see where that website is listed. I don't see it here. Maybe it's on the back. I don't think it's back there either. But I'll just say it. Here it is. All you have to do is visit the website to get started, irs.gov/free file. That's it. That's a mouthful, isn't it? irs.gov/free file. And as much as I do it, this it's this close. There it is. irs.gov. There we go. irs.gov/free file. I'm blind. So there it is. And to my staff who prepared this for us, thank you. From there, whoever clicks onto this address can choose to visit the individual Free File website of one of the companies, one of several companies offering this service, and choose the one that works best for them. Sounds pretty simple, even to me. But only a few million taxpayers out of 100 million that are eligible, only a few million use the program every year. So clearly we can do better than this. We started on our subcommittee looking into Free File about a year ago after reading news reports alleging that some of the companies participating in the program were making it harder, not easier, for taxpayers to find their Free File websites. And this is important, colleagues. This is important because very few taxpayers go directly to the irs.gov address that I mentioned right here, website. Instead, when most taxpayers are ready to file their taxes, they use search engines like Google, and they type in phrases like free online tax filing or free tax return. For search terms like this, Google might return thousands, maybe millions of results. Those results can oftentimes be confusing. Imagine that you're trying to get some information and you get thousands of ideas from, searching on Google. That can often be real confusing or just too much for a lot of us to try to wade through. On top of that, Mr. President, we were able to confirm that 5 of the 12 companies that participated in the Free File program in tax year 2018, 2 years ago, that include H&R Block, Intuit, TaxHawk, Drake Software, and Tax Slayer, apparently took steps to actually prevent their Free File websites from even appearing in search results. So when someone searched on Google last year for free tax help, they were likely to land on the website for one of the heavily advertised commercial tax filing products. Some of those commercial products have names that are similar to the names companies have given their Free File offerings. For example, H&R Block has a commercial product called Free Online, and Intuit has one called TurboTax Free Edition. These names sound a lot like the names given to the IRS Free File products, but they are not the same. In fact, there is no guarantee that they will actually be free despite their names. So I want to be clear, Mr. President, there's nothing wrong with Free File partner companies having their own successful commercial products and continuing to innovate. Nothing wrong with that. And I'm told there are legitimate reasons someone might want to prevent a website from appearing in a Google search result. However, it's important that we make sure not to confuse taxpayers any more than they might already be confused when it comes to preparing their tax returns. It's also imperative to Senator Portman and his staff and my staff that the lowest income taxpayers are able to access the free filing services that Congress wanted to be sure were available for them. It's too easy for a taxpayer to click on a search result that looks like a free filing option and wind up being charged for extra services they didn't want and frankly didn't need. In fact, Mr. President, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration estimates that more than 14 million taxpayers who qualified for the Free File program used commercial software offered by a Free File partner company and may have paid a fee to file their 2018 federal tax return when they did not need to do so. Just think about that. 14 million taxpayers could have filed their federal tax returns completely free, but instead ended up paying a fee. And while it's entirely possible that some of those 14 million people knew they were using a commercial product and chose to pay more, many simply didn't know they might have a better option. Well, we have an obligation to make sure they know about it. Both Congress and the IRS need to do more to make certain that taxpayers who are eligible for a free product and want a free product don't end up paying for something they should not have to pay for. It's that simple. So how did this happen? Well, we've learned that part of the blame belongs to the IRS, which apparently has designated only 3 full-time employees. Think about that. For how many people we have in this country, Mr. President? 300 million plus? The IRS has designated only 3 full-time employees to work on Free File, and I'm told it's not conducted sufficient oversight over the program for years. For example, our subcommittee on investigations learned that the IRS has not completed a customer satisfaction survey for the Free File program since 2009. That's 11 years. That's right. Since 2009, even though the Treasury Department's Inspector General for Tax Administration recommended greater use of customer satisfaction surveys, not last year or the year before that, but as far back as 2007. And despite Americans' growing tendency to use search engines like Google to navigate the internet, the IRS and its Free File partner companies apparently never discussed online search practices until very recently. This allowed individual companies to make their own choices about how their Free File websites could be accessed. There's also the fact that the IRS has not had a marketing budget for the Free File program in more than 6 years. When we asked IRS officials to explain the lack of marketing, they told us a couple of things. Here's one of the things we heard. They said, well, and this is a quote, "It may have been an IRS budget decision as part of the broader reduction in spending the agency received over the last several years." And it says, as a part of the broader reduction in spending, actually it was the broader reduction in appropriations the agency received over the last several years. The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration came to pretty much the same conclusion. And here's what we got from the Inspector General over at Treasury. The IRS was trying to, quote, save money and be more efficient. Well, Mr. President, we should make sure that we save American taxpayers money, no doubt, especially at a time when every dollar counts for our family and, frankly, for our government. With that said, what can Congress do? What is our role here in the Senate, in the House, in the Congress, and in the White House, in the executive branch of our government, and Treasury? As senior members of the Finance Committee, Senator Portman and I have listened to former IRS Commissioner John Koskinen, a great guy, great leader, and to the Government Accountability Office, led by Gene Dodaro, a wonderful Controller General. We listened to them lament the fact that for years, Congress has appropriated the IRS with far less money than it needs to provide adequate tax enforcement and good customer service, as well as to better ensure that all federal taxpayers are paying their fair share to fund our government and meet our many obligations. Despite a recent bump up in funding for the IRS in the past year, since fiscal year 2010, it's over the last decade, funding for the IRS overall has declined by $3.1 billion after accounting for inflation, while the number of individual taxpayers has increased by $13 million. That makes no sense to me. And my guess is it doesn't make much sense to most people. Listen again. Funding for the IRS, our job is to appropriate money, among other things. Funding for the IRS overall has declined by over $3 billion after accounting for inflation, while the number of individual taxpayers who need to be served, who have questions to ask and tax returns to submit, that number has gone up by 13 million people. These IRS budget cuts have impaired both tax enforcement and taxpayer service operations. For example, reduced funding has led to a reduction in the number of employees assigned to answer telephone calls. The inevitable result is fewer taxpayer calls answered, longer wait times to get through to the IRS representatives, and a lot of needless frustrations from the people that we and the IRS are serving, the people that sent us here to work for them. And all of this was before the coronavirus pandemic forced the IRS to send thousands of its employees home. So as I prepare to wrap up here today, Mr. President, let me say to all of our colleagues, those that are gathered here and those that are not, our colleagues both here in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, the other end of this building, while it's important that we ask why the IRS did not do a better job overseeing the Free File program and make clear that it must do more, it's equally important that we, in the legislative branch of government and in the administration, this administration and future administrations, provide the IRS with the tools and resources it needs to do the important job it does. The last time the IRS had a marketing budget for the Free File program, it's been between $750,000 and $1.5 million marketing the program annually to, probably over 100 million, we'll say close to 200 million taxpayers. That sounds like a lot of money, but when you're talking about over 100 million taxpayers, it doesn't go that far. And while I'm sure that's I'm not sure that's a big enough budget, Mr. President, given the large number of taxpayers who seem to be unaware of Free File, even a modest amount of funding would go a long way toward ensuring that millions of eligible taxpayers do not have to pay a dime to file their taxes online. Well, colleagues, my staff and my other colleagues often hear me say these, or I think they're called aphorisms. And one of my favorites is find out what works and do more of that. Think about that. Well, find out what works, do more of that. Well, Mr. President, we found out on our subcommittee how we can strengthen and support this Free File program. Let's do it. Let's not just talk about it. Let's not just complain about it. Let's do it. And let's begin by doing our part and provide this year and in the years that follow the IRS with the resources it needs and where necessary, the additional guidance it needs to make Free File work the way we intended it to work almost 2 decades ago. Another thing I'd like to say, Mr. President, is in adversity lies opportunity. Think about that. In adversity lies opportunity. I wish I could claim that as my own. That's Einstein. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, the filing deadline for taxpayers has been pushed back, as we know, to July 15th, not April 15th, a month and a half ago, but July 15th. Here's what that means. It means we have more time to get the word out. IRS has more time to get the word out to eligible Americans that they can file their taxes for free. More time to get the word out to eligible Americans that they can file their taxes for free. Get the word out to whom? To tens of millions of American taxpayers. I want to encourage all eligible taxpayers to visit irs.gov/free file right here. irs.gov/free file to ensure that they have access to the free resources that are available to them. And I'd also ask everyone to help spread the word. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. When you coop up at home and you can't go anyplace, you're still locked down, you're quarantined, what are you talking about? We'll talk about Free File and say, here's a way we can maybe save some money, and our friends could too, instead of taking a different course. So that's it. I'll close with this, Mr. President. I like movies, and I know the presiding officer likes movies. And one of my all-time favorite movies, and to our colleague who's joined us from Alaska, one of his all-time favorite movies, talked about it many times, is Back to the Future. And this is in a way Back to the Future. Like back when I first got to the House, we used to do, as I said before, Senator Sullivan, Senator Cruz came to the floor, I used to talk about every year we do, in every county in Delaware, there's only 3 counties, we'd actually do town hall meetings, and we'd have folks in from the IRS and from the State Division of Revenue to actually help people prepare and file their taxes. And we don't do that anymore, but actually we have something that's even better, a whole lot better. And it's this free file program that the IRS has and is available if people just knew about it. I'll close with these words. I wish I could claim this as well, but here, I don't know who said this, but maybe one of our smart, if we had pages here, I'd ask one of the pages to figure it out. But ever hear this saying, if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it, is there really a noise? Think about that. The tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it. Is there really a noise? Well, if we got a great program through the IRS to help people, millions and millions of people file their taxes for free and they don't know about it, is there really a benefit? I think arguably not. We can do something about that. Let's do it.